Hi, congratulations to those of you who are planning to get married, who are thinking to get married, whose marriage is on the horizon. I just can't wait to welcome you to the ups and downs, the ins and outs, the highs and lows of married life. And I know that you'll realize that you're taking a very important and significant step. And I just want to spend a little time giving you some concepts and ideas that you may have already thought about, but expanding and exploring them in greater depth. But yes, before I go on, it is great that God has blessed you with someone that you love and you want to share the rest of your life with. There are many people who want to get married but can't find someone that they're compatible with, who share their values, and they're frustrated by that. So it's really a blessing that you've found each other. So congratulations on that. And I know that you are aware that this is a significant decision, one that would impact the rest of your life, one that is fraught with a lot of risk, because to love is to risk. And I'm going to share both the upside and the downside. And I know that you're aware that there are many people who start this journey and don't end. They fall by the wayside. In fact, the marriage statistic, you definitely would be aware, would be about, for the UK, it's about 42%. For the US, is a little bit higher. So for every 10 people, there are 4 people who don't make it. And then those who make it, there is a higher percentage that don't realize the great benefit of marriage. They're living in homes where the shadows are never lifted. And let me just quickly share. And this is an interesting quote that comes from the book Adventist Home. And I think I would like to read this to you. I'm going to give you the good and the bad. Don't worry about it. Don't get too uptight. Here she says, here Ellen G. White says, if those who are contemplating marriage would not have miserable, unhappy reflections after marriage, they must make it a subject of serious, earnest reflection now. This step, she says, taken unwisely, is one of the most effective means of ruining the usefulness of young men and women. Heaven help us. Life becomes a burden, a curse. No one can so effectively ruin a woman's happiness and usefulness and make life a heart-sickening burden as her own husband. And no one can do 100th part as much to chill the hopes and aspiration of a man, to paralyze his energies and ruin his influence and prospects as his own wife. It is from the marriage hour that many, many men and women date their success or failure in life and their hopes in the future life. Now, that may sound a bit gloomy, but don't worry, because the converse is true. The converse is true. When you get the right person in your life, when you gel together, when you support each other, when you decide to commit in ways to make it work, when you do the things, the skills, the strategies to make it work, then success is yours. And I like to share something from this guy, Brad Wilcox, who is a sociologist from the University of Virginia.
See here on the screens to my left and to my right, basically, that both women and men kind of heading into their retirement in their 50s who are stably married have about 10 times the assets as their single female and male peers. So it's just no question that kind of financially, for the average American man and woman, marriage is a much kind of better path to prosperity than staying single. Again, contra that Bloomberg article. But I want to underline again that there's much more to life than money. And so when it comes to sort of happiness, what we see is that yes, education, work, and money matter, but that marriage outpaces these 3 pathways into happiness. And in particular, we see, in looking at what's called the General Social Survey, a leading social barometer, is that nothing compares to a good marriage for Americans, for men and women, when it comes to predicting their global life satisfaction. This figure here kind of gives us a sense of the GSS story here. And we're looking at thousands of adults across the US in the GSS. It's run by the University of Chicago. It's funded by the federal government. This is kind of like the gold standard for social barometers here in the US. So we can see here on the left is that, yes, a college degree boosts your odds of happiness. Who's graduating this next spring? Just raise your hand here for a second. Okay, so you can look forward to a 64% boost in your happiness, come spring. We can see that, yes, money is linked to more happiness here in yellow. And yes, having a good job, a satisfying job here in red is linked to more satisfaction. But just simply being married is a more powerful predictor of happiness for ordinary Americans. And then you can see here in green that nothing in the GSS, simply nothing compares to a good marriage in predicting happiness for ordinary Americans. And I've looked at other factors in the GSS. I've looked at sexual frequency. I've looked at self-rated health. I've looked at religious attendance. And there is no variable in the GSS that compares to a good marriage when it comes to predicting happiness. We can see in the next slide here that the odds of being very happy, to be more precise, with life increased by 545% for those who are in a good marriage.
So there we have it from one of the top scholars, a sociologist from the University of Virginia, about the value of marriage in generating happiness and fulfillment, that nothing could compare to that. And we know that from the scriptures, because the scriptures, men and women, are designed to support each other in, looking after children. And I go into that in a little bit more details later on in this course. So, how do you save your marriage before it starts? How do you create what we call, or what I call, an unbreakable divorce-proof marriage without months of marriage counseling? Right. Here's an interesting observation that you may know. Nobody ever gets married to get divorced. That's not the primary function of marriage, but we know that that happens. In fact, every person who gets married, including you are going to beat the odds. You intend to beat the odds. You are going to spend the rest of your days and life with this wonderful person that you have found. But there are some interesting things that I would like to share with you that I've observed. One of the first things that I have observed, that most people spend more time and money preparing for their wedding than their marriage. And there is a difference here. People look forward to the wedding. They spend thousands. In fact, in the UK, it is upwards of anything from 6,000 to over £64,000 on their wedding. Just listen to that. You're going to spend a lot of money on your ring, and your engagement ring, I presume, is very expensive. Those of you who have engagement rings. Then there is the wedding. Then there is the reception. Then there is the dress and the suit. Then there is the honeymoon. And that could really cost a pretty penny. And that's before you get married. The interesting thing about it, listen very carefully, the interesting thing about it, even though these are wonderful things to have, even though they make you feel good, and the celebration and all of that, guess what? These don't add one iota. They don't contribute one thing to the success of your marriage. After the wedding comes the marriage. And what is interesting in my observation, that very few people spend either as much time or money in preparing for the actual marriage. And so I could ask you the $1 million question. How many classes have you attended? I know that many people get marriage counseling, marriage coaching. Marriage counseling may go on for about 6 months and maybe one session per week. But if you get preparing for a lifetime, how much time have you spent in finding out, in researching, in equipping yourself with the skills, the strategies, the relationship and conflict skills that are required and necessary? I know many of you are professionals. You work, you may have spent thousands and tens of thousands on your education through loans and through time and energy and effort in passing exams, in going out on apprenticeship before you're qualified. Simple thing as driving. You need to learn to drive. You need to get your license. But not many of us spend that amount of time preparing for. And this is my challenge to you. Is to equip yourself, to attend marriage classes, take courses, to do research for the success of this thing that you're creating, your marriage. Luckily, this course, we're going to show you and tell you and explore ideas, and I call it a course, I call it a class. It's marriage education on how to create an unbreakable divorce-proof marriage without months of counseling, saving your marriage before it starts.